What do you make of this now? I think a lot of people say, okay, we still have safe harbor language and it's going to prevent obviously a lot of the major banks from coming in. And I know that you don't really focus on the investment thesis behind all this, but I think the main priority for a lot of people that are following this space is safe banking. You've indicated before in the past that you think this is only going to intensify things when it comes to safe banking passing if we do get rescheduling. Why is that? Do you still believe now that we're here talking today? And what's the next steps? You and I discussed, along with Anthony, mentioned how this is not in their sandbox. They're not familiar with what the difference between safe banking and rescheduling is. I firmly believe that with an announcement like this is obviously going to get the attention of a lot of different politicians now. Does this apply any kind of awareness pressure towards them to get something done? Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Trade to Black podcast. Happy weekend. Hope you all had a great week. What a week it was. A lot of us reached out and basically said, it's time to get the man on, Mr. Don Murphy. So that's exactly what we've done. Let's welcome him back in. Good to see you. Happy weekend. What a week it's been. A lot going on. Good to see you. How are things?
Things are fine. So it's good news. It's more of the same good
Yeah.
news from a higher source, and that's always good. But in a lot of ways, it wasn't news to us. It wasn't news to me. We had heard this before.
Yes.
The AP scooped it. It was validated. It was by the White House, by the administration. So now the big news is the president's actually making a statement, which is very good. I'm not so sure what that statement was, but it's a done deal. It's very much a done deal.
Get him in and out 45 seconds, right? Before he can go off. But, the reality is that the times have changed. And I know this is a complicated topic, which is why you're on here versus doing something on Twitter, because I know there's a lot of people with a lot of questions and you just can't answer enough. But what do you make of this now? I think a lot of people say, okay, we still have safe harbor language and it's going to prevent obviously a lot of the major banks from coming in. And I know that you don't really focus on the investment thesis behind all this, but I think the main priority for a lot of people that are following this space is safe banking. You've indicated before in the past that you think this is only going to intensify things when it comes to safe banking passing if we do get rescheduling. Why is that? Do you still believe now that we're here talking today? And what's the next steps? Can you maybe share us a little bit of direction?
Well, let's be clear, and I've said this in the past.
Yeah.
And many others we wanted safe banking before Schedule 3
Yeah.
because we thought it would take some of the wind out of the sails, and in some respects, it has.
Hmm.
Because I'll tell you, the people that follow me on Twitter are saying, "Oh, we don't need it," or "We do need it," whatever. They think Schedule 3 is way better than safe banking, and we've heard this before. So nothing wrong there. But I think the momentum is shifted in this respect. I think when you look at what Schedule 3 does and what it doesn't do and who it delivers for, President Biden needs safe banking, not because he needs safe banking. He needs safe banking as a vehicle for some social justice equity provisions.
Yes.
And that's the HOPE Act.
Right.
He needs the HOPE Act because to many in the advocacy world, they look at Schedule 3 as a bone to the MSOs and big pharma. And some of them think it's going to wipe out the little guy. And that's who the advocacy world cares most about. Quite
Yes.
honestly, I care most about the patients and consumers, and I think that's the right position to take, not who is going to make what money, but that's for them to deal with. But without safe banking, HOPE Act doesn't happen. And if you watch those 45 seconds, the president made a comment, and I tweeted this out, and it's, there's captioning, so it's easy to read. He says, this will go a long way toward reversing longstanding inequities.
Right.
I don't know how. I'm curious what that means. Will 280E help the little guy survive longer? Sure, but it will do much more for the big guy than the little guy.
Yeah.
Now, okay, but I don't know. Like those were virtue signaling words that didn't mean anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
So he is sort of telegraphing to me, yeah, they get it. And by the way, I can't share with you who, but I talked to a lot of members on Wednesday.
What'd they
And
say?
I threw this idea out there that the president needed safe banking as a vehicle for hope. And not one of them said otherwise. Not one of them suggested I was wrong. Now, this may have been a theory they hadn't contemplated,
Yeah.
but they did say, Yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense. One of them even said, "Are you talking to the White House about this?" I'm like, "Senator, this is about as far as I go, talking to senators." So they didn't disagree with me. I'll tell you that.
Man, we got to get that message out to that, right? Like it's just, it all makes sense. If you've had people's reaction like that, this is all part of the process, though, right?
Yeah, but here's the bad news. If Biden needs it, Republicans have a reason to kill it,
Mm,
at least until after the election.
hmm.
So we only have a relatively small, we have 9 weeks between now and the election. They're off all of August, all of October, 3 weeks in September. So unless safe banking with hope happens between now and the end of July, is not going to happen
I don't see that
until
happening.
until the lame duck,
Yeah, I don't.
which you
Yeah.
know we've taken a bill that is really apolitical. Safe banking, in my opinion, has always been apolitical, and we've suddenly turned it into something that is going to be very political. It's political as a vehicle, and so that's the problem. Now, I want to share some other thoughts here. The idea that Leader Schumer could bring this to the floor,
Yeah.
he holds the gavel, and yes, he could do this. So when people say, well, why doesn't he do it? The reason he doesn't do it is likely because safe banking, we talked about the FAA and
Yeah.
the NDAA being vehicles for amendment, whether it was germane or not. What is very germane to safe banking is the credit card bill that is problematic for on the bubble senators. This pits the big banks against retailers and indirectly against consumers,
Hmm.
and nobody really wants to vote on this before the election.
Hmm.
So, safe banking is an election year problem for Democrats. At the same time, it's a solution for Democrats.
Right.
Now, how that plays out, who wins, which is more important, remains to be seen. But those are some thoughts that I couldn't share on Twitter because it's just too complicated.
Yeah, I hear you.
But that's what I'm hearing, and that's what I'm seeing, and that explains a lot. That explains why the leader would not bring safe banking up. And with each day we get closer to the election, it becomes harder to do. Now,
Wow.
let's go back to Schedule 3 for just a second. If
Yeah, what is
you,
this?
if you,
Just like when we were there last month, you and I discussed, along with Anthony, mentioned how this is not in their sandbox. They're not familiar with what the difference between safe banking and rescheduling is. I firmly believe that with an announcement like this is obviously going to get the attention of a lot of different politicians now. Does this apply any kind of awareness pressure towards them to get something done? But to your point, there's a lot of moving parts and it becomes more complicated than just that.
well, it does in this respect. Even Fox News
Yeah.
was asking the question about Schedule 3 and safe banking on the Hill last week, 2 weeks ago, when all this news broke. And it became like a burner issue, not a front burner. I mean, look, you turn on the news, this took less than 30 seconds on Brett Baer's show yesterday, right? And that's when I sort of took the picture of the vote, of the polling, 69% yes, 30 some percent no. And that's on adult use, by the way. That's not medical. And that's what Schedule 3 is.
Right.
Unfortunately, the president is trying to take something that is medical and benefits a certain segment and turn it into something else, which is why I long time ago said, hey, they may want to bury the announcement and then bring it out on their own terms.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we see happening here.
Well, hire that producer at Fox. Finally, somebody gets it and decides to cover a story that a lot of people find very, very interesting, to say the least. But that's about as red as it gets. And traditionally, most red states vote against cannabis. Some could say Arizona did pass it, but at the end of the day, I think what you said in a tweet makes sense. Do you really classify Arizona as a red state?
Yeah, no, it's got two, well, in theory, two Democrats. It elected two Democrats to the Senate, and it's got a Democrat governor. So I wouldn't put that in the same category with Florida, and that's kind of the problem. I mean, Florida. Now we're all over everything. By the way, vote yes on 3 is kind of fun because we've got Measure 3 in Florida. We had Measure 3 in other states. the cannabis somehow ends up being 3 all the time, and then there's Schedule 3. So there's it's a little complicated, a
I
little
interviewed Kim
confusing.
Rivers yesterday morning, and she's like, "I'm
Yeah.
saying 3," and she's like, "Which one?" And I'm just like, "Measure 3." Like, that's what I know, Florida, like, it's common sense. She's like, "Oh, Schedule 3," and I'm just yeah, it became very confusing, but saying all that, that was interesting, some of the tweets you went back and forth that you still believe safe banking has a better chance of passing than what you do on, say, Measure 3, Amendment 3, Yes on 3, whatever you want to call it, based out of Florida. You firmly believe that safe banking has a better chance of passing than adult use passing in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I believe safe banking is well over 80% in the lame duck,
Good point. In the lame
well
duck.
over it. In the
Okay,
lame duck. Yeah.
step back then. As we said, if we're gonna get a vote on safe banking prior to the election, it's gotta happen between now and the end of July, which both you and I know is not gonna be the case. So if we push this post-election, you still firmly believe it's passing. It's got 80% plus support. But you think probably the greatest chance of all could be during lame duck session, is what you're
It
thinking?
ha it has to be. It has to be.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting to say the least.
And
But
look, we've got the votes to kill a filibuster on record, right?
yeah,
In fact, thanks to questions you ask of members, and you got them on the record. And these are people I knew where they were, but I didn't. When I said we've got the votes to kill a filibuster, I that's what I was talking about. And now they've said it to you, and they've said it to Matt Laszlo and some others, I guess, publicly. So they're out. I didn't out them, but we got the votes, and that
yeah,
makes it problematic for Schumer to blame. You can't blame Republicans,
yeah.
not at all. So
Uh,
it's getting very sticky, but the attention is being directed in the right places. Like
why is it getting so
red,
sticky though? Like what is it? Like what are we
because
not
it's so
getting?
political. Every day it gets more and more political. As you get closer to the election, it gets more political, and nobody wants to do anything to hurt somebody's chances. Look, here's the thing.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter what the rest of the country thinks
yeah.
about Schedule 3.
70% were voting in favor of legalizing this nationwide. Go
Right.
ahead.
The real consideration is, what do they think in Wisconsin, in North Carolina, and Georgia? Those are the three states that they don't have adult use, and they barely have medical. They got CBD or something like that. So when the president comes out and says, like, we're going to legalize medical marijuana, and I'm not even sure that's what I mean, he talked about Schedule 3, but does anybody really know what that means? Does the
They
average
don't.
person? No, they don't. Look, even the head of the HHS doesn't know one from five. So, what does the average person think? And so, those are the three states. They're battleground states. This is where it would matter. If you were in North Carolina and you said, "Gee, I really want medical marijuana, and we don't have it here," then what Biden did is a big deal. But
Yeah,
if you're in Colorado, or say Michigan's a battleground state,
of course.
uh, but they don't care about Schedule 3. Doesn't matter at all to them. Not at all.
Hmm. Even in a state that already has a medicinal and recreational program in the state of Michigan, you don't think they care? Probably not.
I mean, who cares? The MSOs care about 280E. That's a big deal. And to the extent that it lowers the cost of your medicine or your drug of choice, yeah, it matters. But I don't think we're going to see those sort of changes at the retail level anytime between now and the election.
Yeah. So moment of truth time. You still believe that this gets passed though, is what you think.
Absolutely.
Just a matter of when is the occasion. Like, do you think this gets pushed out like a year from now? Like any like
No,
do you think
no,
no,
no, no, no, no,
no.
no. Honestly, and this is going to hurt my long-term employment chances. Not that I need them, because I could have retired years ago, and I kind of wanted to, and then you guys dragged me back in.
Oh,
So thanks to that for
you
that.
leave your job. Your first job you're getting is TDR, buddy.
I do not have the voice for it. I don't have the face for it. So
Oh
heck,
my God, are you
anyway,
kidding me? It's not about the voice and face. Those days are over. It's all about
so
information, and you have the information.
yeah. So I just next year, what happens next year to make safe banking more passable? Trump is a president. Republicans control the Senate, but maybe lose the House. I mean, it just doesn't get better. I said this a year ago. Well, right after the election, You think this is bad because Republicans control the House? I think this is a good thing. And let me tell you why. And then I listed, 10 reasons to be bullish on SAFE. And more than a year ago, when I said all these things, we hadn't had a hearing in the banking committee
Yeah.
this term. I mean, we had in 2019 when Republicans controlled it, but we hadn't had a hearing. We hadn't had a hearing on SAFE when Democrats controlled the Senate. We certainly had a vote in the banking committee. That banking committee had not held a vote in like 5 years
Yeah.
on anything. And so we have made huge strides towards getting there. I don't think they did this for just show
Yeah.
because like I said, safe banking isn't isn't worthy of a politic. There's no politics involved there. Nobody's putting it on their literature. Nobody's doing an ad about it. Nobody's putting it on their website. Now, will they put hope? Yeah,
For sure they will.
yeah.
And if Biden wants that expungement money for the states, like you said, he needs SAFE, right?
That's the way I see it. And others, and there are plenty of senators who agree with me.
So the next steps, path moving forward, is the message has got to get through to his administration based off of that. Is there any idea or strategy to go about doing that?
No, I think this is a conversation that the White House needs to have with the majority leader, and they need to say, we need safe and hope. We need hope, and we're willing to take whatever fallout comes if hope and safe have some amendment attached, like the credit card bill.
Yeah.
And just so you know, years ago, when the Republicans were debating hemp, they didn't want to have a vote on hemp, legalization of hemp, because they were afraid that I and I had the votes to amend it up to cannabis, full blown cannabis.
Right.
And I said, no, I would never do anything to interfere with passing of legalization of hemp.
Right.
You
And the,
know,
and the rest is history. Here we are. Well, this is all helpful information. How have you been otherwise? Good. But, with this announcement this week, like, have you, has your workload picked up? Like, how's it changed at all? Is it
no,
too
no,
early
no,
to
no.
tell?
No, it's fun to be able to talk to Republicans about something that has happened, not something that might happen, right? Like, okay, now that this Schedule 3 has been announced, and I haven't talked to anybody since the president's announcement, by the way, but look, I believed once the DEA came out and said what it did, even though it was sort of leaked, and then it was confirmed by the administration. I was talking to members about that, and I had some pushback, and some of them said it's not their authority, blah blah blah. I said, well, respectfully, Senator, if it was your authority, why didn't you exercise it? You had your chance.
Yeah.
Like, you could have done something then. Don't
Yeah.
complain. You can't complain about it now. It looks disingenuous. It looks lazy,
Hmm.
and so I haven't seen him quoted, so that's good.
Well, interesting times to say the least. I think the big takeaway here, though, is just that lame duck session is when you think
And
something could
I
happen.
know you've all been through this before. I
We
know it. I'm
have.
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. Don't say sorry. Like, you're doing everything you possibly can. What I'd like to just get an idea is just like, I think it's better understanding for a while there, for a couple months ago, I thought for the early stages that rescheduling would probably answer a lot of these questions. But look, does it solve all the problems? Absolutely not. But it definitely is a big step in the right direction on probably how a lot of politicians view cannabis in some ways. Do you not think?
Yeah, they've had to answer questions that they never had to. They had to answer questions publicly that they never had to answer before. They
Yeah.
were they were answering to me, but I wasn't sharing that stuff publicly. And now even Fox News is doing that. So that's good for us.
Yeah. There's a few questions that we did earlier today. People wanted me to ask you. There was a lot of comments here. Politicians have had too many excuses for not educating themselves on the data for marijuana. To me, their excuses or prejudice are a cop out. At what point will they actually have a fact based conversation on cannabis? I think there was somebody reached out to me regarding hemp, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll make sure that I reach out with any questions pertaining to that. But
Let me put. Can I push back on that first comment?
yeah, of course.
that elected officials owe a duty to get themselves educated.
Yeah.
No, there are too many issues that they need education on,
Yeah.
and the winner are the advocates who educate the elected official. Like, you cannot, as an elected official, know everything about everything. If they did, they'd be making a whole lot more money and having to deal with a lot less issues than they do. It's incumbent upon us as supporters and advocates to educate elected officials. And that's why I make such a big deal about what Daryl Putman did to get me involved in this.
Yeah.
I didn't know before that. My dad had passed away with from cancer, and I didn't know to get him cannabis. Just a few short years before, I met Daryl Putman, and he educated me.
Yeah.
If you're using cannabis for medical purposes, you really need to pick up the phone, call your elected official, and say, "Look, I know you may not like this, but let me tell you why it's important." If you do that, then this thing flies through Congress. Then we don't. I don't have a need to be on Capitol Hill.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the big thing is that uh what people's perception is of what goes on in Washington. It was a big eye opener for me and Anthony and the whole crew that was there last month. There is so much stuff that they have to keep on top of. And the big takeaway is like, look, this is the center of our world, but they've got like Congressman Brian Shaw. Like when we talked, it was Brian Shaw. I'm trying to remember his name. One of the congressmen that we for guy from Florida.
Mass,
Mass,
Brian
sorry.
Mass.
I could not believe the amount of information that he was sharing with us that he's got to review like on a daily basis. Like it's not like I know it's frustrating at times, but God bless, obviously, all of them that are involved. Loved having the conversation with Dave Joyce. He was incredible, spent time with us and gave us her time. But we got to get back to Washington. We got to come up with a strategy and a game plan to push this narrative moving forward. But
Yeah.
have you touched base with Ricky Williams, Jim McMahon since they were in Washington? How's that going?
That went real well. I can't say I've talked directly to him myself,
Yeah.
but I know they had a very good time. And I don't mean good time, but they enjoyed themselves and they believe what they were here to do was of value. And they had real conversations with members. And I think they'll be back sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Actually, I found the question for Don. How does Mitch McConnell deal with the cognitive dissonance of hemp farmers selling cannabis products while being a staunch opponent of state legal cannabis? You have any insight on that? Do you want to touch
No,
that?
but no, but it's not just him.
I hear
Like
you.
there are plenty. Look, I talk to these guys in North Carolina who are bad, and I'm like, how can you be bad? You're from North Carolina. You defended and advocated for tobacco all those years,
Yeah.
and tobacco kills way more people than cannabis, because of course cannabis kills zero, right?
Yeah. Times have changed. This is 2024. When did tobacco really begin? 100 years ago, if not longer?
Oh, way long. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say. Um, Senator Tom Tillis was caught on camera. I recorded it and put it up. Fox News asked him a question about Schedule 3. He gave a
Yeah.
very good, long, deliberative answer. And I had a fair number of people tweet back and say, wow, I was kind of impressed. He ain't there yet, but he's gettable.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Tillis from North Carolina and a few others who are on the no column could be the honest brokers who get this over the line.
Yeah.
There was one member. In fact, I went into the Senate International Drug Caucus
Yep.
hearing like within an hour of the announcement that the DEA had made a few weeks ago. And I said to those senators, I'm like, why are you not talking about this? Like, this is relevant. All this
Yes.
other stuff they're talking about is not relevant. This is relevant. So I think the next caucus hearing will have to be on Schedule 3 for sure.
Look, I know you got a lot on your plate right now. And listen, again, all of our audience appreciates all the hard work. I do want to leave this with you. And I thought this is rather interesting that you put on Twitter. Was actually earlier this week. in a tweet on X where you outline that if a state legal cannabis corporation pays millions in federal, state, and local taxes, should it have to do so in cash? And you made this point when referring to Senator Josh Hawley, making a point about if a corporation makes millions working for China, it shouldn't be able to get contracts for the federal government. However, firms like McKinsey do this all the time, and how his bill, actually that passed earlier this week, will stop this. Hypocrisy at its best, is it not?
Yeah, it's I'll just say it's inconsistent. And that was
Inconsistent.
a tweet. That was a tweet. Somebody said, "There's a great tweet." I'm like, it writes itself.
Yeah.
When these members put out this sort of thing, and it's like, "Oh, wait a second. Oh, so you want to help people get mortgages and reduce the rate for mortgages so people can get into houses?" And I'm like, "Hey, you know a better idea? Safe banking, so people, their income actually qualifies them for a mortgage, no matter what the rate is." Without safe banking, 500,000 cannabis front employees can't get access to mortgages. How's
Yeah.
that okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, I had just seen Holly that day, and this was my opportunity to give him a little door ding on the way out. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, it is what it is, but yeah, a lot going on. And listen, I know your job's going to intensify even more, but keep up the great work, and we'll get in touch with you as to when we're going to be in Washington next to figure out what to do next, right?
I look forward to it. And listen, before I go, I want to thank so many of your viewers who donated to some of the causes. We went out and had a 150-mile bike ride from Cumberland, Maryland to Pittsburgh last week,
Awesome.
and raised more than $10,000. So
Wow.
that was really nice,
Well, that's
and I
good.
want to thank you and your viewers for that.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, and I'm glad that all of our viewers. Kudos to all of you people out there. That's very nice if you contribute towards Don. Appreciate that, and I know Don does too. But that's great. As usual, smash that like button. Leave lots of comments below. Anything that we missed, any questions you have for Don, please let us know. We'll reach out to him and get back as much information as possible. But be patient. This is a very complicated topic, and a lot of tweets or emails I don't think can really justify a lot of answers involved in this, which is why we wanted to have you on today. So I hope people get a better kind of guidance or direction on what to expect next regarding this whole safe banking kind of direction as to where it's going to go over these next few months. But we got kind of a good indication. Whether that happens or not, we shall see. But lame duck session is the big takeaway I get from here tonight.
Afraid so.
It's all good. It's all good. We sit and we wait again. Don, appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. What'd you all think? Is there any information that we're missing? Is there anything you want us to cover? As these industries heat up, we're getting access to more and more big hosts. So let us know the questions that you want us to ask for you. As usual, smash that like button. We want this to go viral. Click on that bell for all notifications for the latest interviews that we're doing. And as usual, let's build this community. Subscribe to our channel because we appreciate it, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.